Hello, Dave here. Welcome to Learn JavaScript with me, going through the book exercises. This is the beginning of chapter 8, and the book is, let me bring it up here. The book is Modern JavaScript, Develop and Design. It was written by Larry Ullman, and I picked it up from Amazon and going through the book, and almost halfway, starting to get into some fun stuff. So chapter 8 is event handling. Once again, if you're interested in the book, you can go to larryullman.com to find out more information about it. But this chapter 8 is event handling. And in order to get us going with event handling, we start by creating what is called a utility library. And excellent idea. And our little utility library, this is going to be a .js file, and I'm calling mine chapter 8 utilities, or ch8 utilities.js, and it'll be included in my HTML files prior to my individual JS files. For example, if I was going to put it into this chapter 7 task.js, well, I would be putting it into the HTML, so it would go before I include the chapter 7 tasks.js. So the utilities that we're using are common, and if I go back to this chapter 7 for a second, notice that we have these embedded functions in here, and let me go back to chapter 7 employee here. This is where I wanted to go. You'll notice that we do this constant text here where we're putting a message, and we take that message and we send this message out to the screen. So if I come over here to that exercise, here's our chapter 7 employee exercise, right? I put some text in here, right? First name and last name, and pick a department and click my Surf's Up button here. You'll see that it put this text out into the HTML. All well and good. And the important thing here is that now we are encapsulating those functions and placing them in a utility file to use over and over. So the first two functions are ones that we've used many times, and it's this dollar function, and since it is a property of the U object, and we'll talk about this code, walk through all of it in a moment, it's going to be the dollar method, and it basically references the element on the page. And then we have number 2 here, and it's called set text, and this actually puts whatever text we pass it out to the element that we pass it. Notice that this element uses the this dot $, so it's using this method up here. And the two new ones for chapter 8 are the add event and remove event methods. So that's what we're going to talk about. And here's our 4 guys. So let's go ahead and start from the top. And it's just another JS file. And we start by creating a variable. Our variable is U, and that's U for utilities, and it's a capital U. Notice that it's equal. Then we got the squigglies, and then we're using the $:" syntax. So by doing that, we're creating the object U, and within that object U, the dollar property, assigning a function to that makes it a method. So this function has one variable coming in, and it is, or has one argument coming in, it is the ID. And this we've used over and over again, and it doesn't matter if this is the only video you've seen. But since it is constant reusable code, it makes sense to encapsulate it in a separate function. So this function, it receives an argument, which ID to use, and this is the ID, and we'll see that. We're going to go through the console to see how this actually works. And if it is a string, then we return the document getElementById of that ID that was passed in, and this basically references the HTML element so that we can use it. Then we create, right, and then having a comma here says we are adding another property. Our next property is setText method, and that function has two arguments. One, the element ID, and two, the actual message text. And this actually puts this message text out to the element that's passed here. So if the element ID is a string and message text is a string, then we create a variable called elementOut and assign it to this $element ID, which basically uses this method to create the reference to the HTML. And then if not elementOut, right, if it doesn't really exist, we return false. Otherwise, right, return kicks us out of this method. Then we use text content if that is available, right? So this is for all the non-IE browsers. And we put the message text in there. And remember, this message text can be anything. Remember, we're passing it in as an argument. And we put it out to the HTML element using the text content method. Or else, if it's IE, we use the inner text method and we return true. Then we have a comma here and we go into our next method, right? We only have two more. Now here's add event. So in order to add events, right, and we're doing this browser agnostic, which means we're writing this code to work in multiple browsers, just like up here, we're handling whether the browser handles this method or this method with this type of code. We're doing whether the browser handles the add event listener method, or if it's Internet Explorer, it uses the attach event method. And this is what Chapter 8 is introducing to us. We've been using these two methods throughout all the other chapters. So add event, we receive three arguments: the object that it's going to work against, what type of event we are going to listen for or we are registering, and what function to execute when that event is triggered. So if object in, so if it is valid and it exists, and object in add event listener, that means that this method exists for this object, then we're going to do the object in add event listener method, passing the type and the function. And right now we pass it false, and this will change later on, and it's something we're going to learn about further on in the chapter. So don't know that much about that third argument to the add event listener method. And that's what it does for everything but Internet Explorer. Otherwise, if it's Internet Explorer, then it has to use this attach event, right? And this type in. So example, if I use click, it is click for the type of event that I'm listening for. But if it's Internet Explorer, it's on click. So that's why we have the on plus type in, and there's no third argument, and then just what function to execute when that happens. And we'll walk through some examples, and then we have the exact reverse of it so that we can remove an event. The important thing here is that using this style, and this is the W3C event handling, or also referred to as DOM level 2 specification, it allows us to add multiple events on the same element. So just using the latest and greatest and writing it in a browser agnostic method. So let's go ahead and take a look at these functions. And again, we're going to be using them in future exercises, but right now we can still experiment with this in the Firefox console. The other consoles can do it also. I just happen to like the Firefox console. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a Control A and a Control C to copy all of this code. Move that out of the way. Right, I'm on this page here. And here's my element, and I know what element that is. It's employee out ID. And again, you can use the Firebug. I'll turn on Firebug. Right, I can inspect that element. I can inspect that element, and I see here it's employee out ID. Okay, so that's all good. Let's go back to the console. And if I come over here, remember I just copied all of our code. I'm going to paste it in here. So here's our exact code out of my utilities.js JavaScript here. Right? Here's that code we just talked about. Nicely highlighted. What a great little console. Now I'm going to go ahead and run that. And right, it ran in the browser here. And it created these values. Let me clear that out so we can put in some other values. So just for the fun of it, let's go ahead and take a look at, if I do, remember that set text, I can change the text in this element here, which is employee out ID, right? So I can do u.set text, right? I created the object u and the method set text. It has two parameters, and I could do employee out ID and let's just say demo text for show, right? And you know, inside a program, you would pass these values. I'm just using literals here for demonstration purposes. If I say run, look at that. It changed this value using my method, and it shows that it executed it over here. So now I have demo text just for show. Now, let's go ahead and create a couple of functions so we can demo our add event methods. So I'm going to go ahead, come down here. Let's get rid of that. Well, I can leave that code out there so you can continue to see it. But now if I do a function, let's create a function, and I'm just going to call it demo function 1. I'm not going to pass it any arguments. Let's give it its curly braces. And in here, I'm just going to do a console.log parenthesis. And I can say, did I just trigger a quick event? Question mark. Just so we can see something happening. I'm going to highlight that so I don't need to execute this again. I'm going to run it. I see over here that it ran successfully. So now I created a function, function 1. Now I can go ahead and register an event. So I'm going to use my U object, my add event method, and give me my parentheses here. And I have to do 3 arguments. So I'm going to use another method as in one of my arguments. I'm going to use my $$ method, right? And that needs parentheses. And in here, I'm going to do my employee ID, employee out ID, right? And that's going to go ahead and set up the reference to this HTML element, right? Because I'm going to do a click event on this HTML element for demo purposes. So what type of event is it? Well, let's do a click event. And I need to tell it what function to execute when I click. So I'm going to use my demo function 1. And let's go ahead and register that event. I click run, and I see that it's registered over here. I can come up here. Now look what happens when I click. Look at that. I just clicked 4 times, and here's my console.log that I just trigger that event. So let's just take that one step further for the fun of it, right? I have a click event triggered. I'm going to create another function demo function 2. And for this one, console.log, I'm going to say mouse, mouse over just happened. So you can guess I'm just doing a mouse over event, just making this easy. And I'm going to go ahead and copy this and paste it. And I'm going to add an event. And it's on the same, I'm going to use the same HTML element, only this time I'm going to do a mouse over event. And I'm going to use demo function 2. So let's execute that. Well, I guess I ought to create my demo function 2 first. So let me highlight this code and run that. Right? So here's my demo function 2 created. Now I can register the event. And I click run. And now that event is registered. So now if I just mouse over, see it says mouse over just happened. See, so let me clear this. Let me start over again, right? Mouse over, mouse over, mouse over. Then I can click, 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 mouse over, click, and here they are. And once again, if I wish to remove them, it's basically the same thing, only it's remove event, and it has to have all the same values in order to remove that event. So I will go ahead and execute that. Right, it removed the click event. And finally, I'm going to do the remove events on the mouse over event. Now, since you can have multiple, you have to make sure I could have one with function demo 1 and demo function 1 and demo function 2. So since I use demo function 2, I have to make sure I remove that event. Now I can run that remove. Right, it removed it. So now I hover over here, you see nothing happening. And if I click, nothing happens. And those events have been removed. So this is a utility library. And now we're getting into actually doing our functions. Let me go ahead and just bring this up for a second. Here's lines 1 through 27. If you want to get them, I will get this out. Once I get the rest of the Chapter 8 exercises going, I'll have it posted out. And all this information will be out on davecoast.com. And you can go to the Learning JavaScript, and that'll take you here to js.davecoast.com. You can go there too, directly, js.davecoast.com. All of these exercises so far are out here, and you come out, debug, console, enjoy. And I've been doing it on my local XAMPP server. here, and that's why I have localhost. But once again, let me bring up the code, and here's the beginning of it. So if you want to pause and grab it for the moment quickly, should be pretty straightforward. And I will have this available shortly. Just send me a message, dave@davecoast.com, or leave a comment. I'll get it. Make sure I can get it to you if you'd rather. Once again, so there it is. I'll hold for a second. And so here's these first two functions. And here's the second two functions. Give it about a couple of seconds. Make it pausable. There it is. Thank you very much for watching. Hopefully, we both know a little bit about JavaScript right now. This has been Learn JavaScript with me. I'm Dave, davecoast.com. Thank you very much.